Aloha. It's Representative Cynthia Thielen speaking from the state capitol. Thank you for tuning in today. And it's my distinct pleasure to have Dr. Panos Prevedouros with us again. Panos is a professor of civil engineering, civil and environmental engineering at the University of Hawaii, and I think one of the foremost experts on the rail system in Hawaii. Panos, welcome to.
Well, my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. We're going to talk about environmental issues today, but before we do, I feel that rail is going to have a very huge environmental impact on Hawaii.
Very much.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about that before we go into some of the other technologies that we'll discuss.
Sure.
I was wondering if you had any comments on the recent proposal by Kamehameha Schools to place the rail at grade level, in other words, not have the elevated
Overhead
system throughout the island.
Yeah. It's an interesting proposal, and it comes in response to several worthy organizations, such as the associations of the planners and the architects, that they are pro-mass transit. They want a rail system, but from the early days, they kept insisting to the mayor that let's do true light rail, which is at grade, on the sidewalk or in the lanes or somewhere at the level, not elevated. Unfortunately, actually, the mayor tricked them, and they kept telling them that there's going to be plenty time in the future to provide input. When they provided input, then he comes back and tells them, oh, it's too late now, we have decided an elevated system. Nevertheless, that didn't stop them, and Bishop Estate also stepped in with some funding, and they found a quite distinguished gentleman from New Jersey who's been applying railroading for a long time. In fact, I found out that for 3 years he worked for Atiko Metro in the middle of Athens.
Oh my.
So he was managing it, and he expanded it to the airport. So he knows his business. So he tried to essentially create a compromise system because completely light rail is not possible in his opinion. So out of the 20 miles, 10 miles will remain elevated and 10 miles will be at grade. So most of the system from Pearl Highlands to essentially downtown Honolulu will be elevated. The Kapolei segment, which is agricultural land, and the in-town system will be at grade. Now
why is that? I mean, assuming that we do have to have a rail, why is it better to have some of it at grade?
Well, some of the advantages, and for example, the Seattle system, the Portland system, and the system in Salt Lake City, the experience is that it is really a form of bus that is more reliable. It's a friendly mode. It's right there, very convenient to take it. It's much less noise because it's not high up there having the steel wheels and steel rails propagating noise all over. The visual impact is minimal because once the train goes away from the station, there's nothing left there.
Right.
It's just, the rails. Nobody's bothered by rails. The stations are friendly and very cheap. Essentially, they're big bus stops. So that's why in their proposal, to do the identical system, they dropped from the $5.3 billion of the Murphy administration to $3.7 billion, which is still a lot of money, but significant savings.
A huge amount. I mean, you're saving billions.
Yeah, elevated structure is very expensive. Now, the difficulty with this proposal is that it will be unique. There are no many systems. Actually, there is no system that you can point your finger and say, look, in that city in the world, they have a mixed heavy rail, elevated, light rail at grade. So actually creating the technology for Honolulu, it's a factor that probably will create some problems because it doesn't exist. The technology is not there to immediately adjust in this type of mixed operation.
Well, there are. Thank you very much, because it's been in the papers and in discussion, saying, well, wait a minute, CAM schools, their analysis says we can save billions by having part of it at grade, and I think the public is quite concerned. The closer it comes to actually having that costly project, go into not go into operation, but really to be built,
right.
then it's too late. And
right.
there are still many people that are very concerned about it.
Very much.
We
very
had
much.
a vote on rail, but now after the fact, after the vote, some information has come out about the amount of money that was spent by the administration
right.
to propose rail.
Yeah, and actually I have an issue with it personally because, and I don't know why it was even ethical, that up to $6 million in taxpayer money was directly spent to promote the project, particularly during the election. So essentially, the Mufi Hanneman administration got a taxpayer-supported, political campaign financing.
So the almost 50% that voted against rail
right.
had to reach into their pockets, pay their taxes.
Pay for it, yeah. I pay you to
it.
Persuade me, so it was
That's
really
not
not a fair game.
Panos, that's not right.
Exactly. And now, from all the people who voted in the mayoral election in September 2008, in November 2008, 50.6% say yes. The bylaws of the city should be amended so the director of transportation should implement a steel wheel and steel rail system. Now, if you go to Palo Alto, California, the smart people, Silicon Valley, they require 2/3 majority.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah,
well, when you're talking billions and
exactly,
billions of dollars
exactly.
for a project,
you really want to see that there is a strong
Absolutely.
constituency. At 50.6, it's bipolar. The community is divided. I mean,
Right.
yes and no is equal with a 0.6% difference. You cannot proceed with $5 billion with this community support. You don't have community support.
you
You
don't
just
have
got a sliver of majority.
So,
it's not wise.
where are we at this point?
We're completing the environmental process. The expectation is that at the end of the year, the FTA will issue
A notice
to proceed, essentially a record on decision approving the environmental process. They will require 1 or 2 years to proceed with their federal funding. In fact, all systems have to wait for that and not begin to build. I do not know why the mayor, for his own political reasons, he wants to start construction. It is not approval to start construction, because after the environmental process is cleared, the governor needs to sign too, which is a side point. We need a state EIS signature there, and we need what is called the FFGA, Full Funding Grant Agreement. This is the agreement that the feds will tell you, okay, here, we shake hands, this is it. For 10 years, you will receive $100 million, so your total purse is $1 billion. Go ahead with this money, see if you can build it.
Well, Panos, this means that if the mayor goes ahead and starts construction, he's maybe forcing the state to pick up, the taxpayers, not the state, it's people that pay taxes, to pick up the full amount if the federal government doesn't ultimately, within the next 2 years, sign off.
In
so
fact,
construction shouldn't start.
It's a huge risk we are taking, because we know now that in Washington, the Congress has overspent.
Well,
okay, to put it mildly.
So
it is possible that they will rein in and say, okay, guys, basta, as the Italians say, no more for a couple of years. So Honolulu doesn't get any money, and we have started the system. So we get an FFGA and say, listen, Senator Inouye was successful enough to give you 30 to 50 million for design. I'm afraid this is all you get. As far as construction, you have to wait much longer, because really the Congress didn't make any appropriations. We cannot give you anything. So it is really very risky to proceed with no FFGA.